Apostle is the 2018 British-American period horror film written and directed by Gareth and released by Netflix. The film is set in 1908 and follows Thomas Richards as he travels to a remote island to rescue his beloved sister, Jennifer, after she is kidnapped by a mysterious religious cult demanding a ransom for her safe return. Thomas, as we learn in the film, is a former missionary who was tortured when he attempted to introduce Christianity to Peking during the Boxer Rebellion, and as a result of the torture and lack of divine intervention, has abandoned religion and his belief in God. Thomas arrives on the island pretending to be a believer in Prophet Malcolm, the cult's leader, who founded the religion based off the fact he was allegedly shipwrecked on the island along with two other convicts, Frank and Quinn, and during this shipwreck claims a woman, a goddess, spoke to him and showed him the way. He also claims to now speak for the mysterious goddess who inhabits the island. The cult itself is cut off from society and the people refuse to pay taxes to the king. Incidentally, the island was historically uninhabited as the soil was apparently tainted. Despite this, crops would grow, and until recently, when the crops then began failing and the animals stopped breeding. Those that were breeding and giving birth would be giving birth to abominations. Facing starvation, Prophet Malcolm devised a plan to kidnap someone wealthy for a large ransom to feed his people. Enter Thomas Richards. Whilst in the church, listening to the prophet, Thomas sees a white-haired old woman, her hair down, walking outside the window. And this is where we learn that potentially not all is as it seems. Later that night, Thomas sneaks out of his cabin after curfew and, while peering in windows, witnesses a man cutting his wife's arm and draining blood into a jar. And, in another house, he sees Malcolm going into his cellar via a hidden trapdoor. He goes back into the boarding house where he was staying and is shocked to see jars of blood lined up the hallway outside each door. Needing to maintain his appearance as a believer, the jar outside his door empty, he pours blood into it from another jar, and whilst doing this, the white-haired woman can be seen watching. He begins to formulate a plan and draws a map of the houses on the island and hides it under the desk for later. The next day, Thomas shows his sister's photograph to another islander, Jeremy, who admits that he has seen her tied up on the boat 1 month ago and was told of the ransom plot from his father, Frank. Jeremy urges Thomas not to pay them the ransom, and Thomas tells Jeremy that he will reveal Jeremy's relationship with another young islander, Fionn, unless he helps him. As the leaders start to realise that not all is right among their flock, they decide to call all new arrivals to the church, where Malcolm then questions Thomas and the other men who recently arrived to find out which one of them was out after curfew. One of the men, shouting "for king and country," attempts to stab Malcolm but is held back by Thomas in an effort to blend in and ensure he remains hidden. The man is then speared by Malcolm's guards, and Thomas in the process is slashed across the chest. However, Andrea, Malcolm's daughter, stitches him up, and Malcolm states how if Thomas bleeds for him, he bleeds for Thomas, they bleed together, and cuts his own hand. That night, getting increasingly desperate to find the intruder, Malcolm parades Jennifer, Thomas's sister, through the village, claiming that she is a traitor and a spy and will be killed if her co-conspirator does not reveal themselves. He cuts off some of her hair as a warning to goad the intruder out of hiding. It fails, and so Malcolm organises a party the next night as a ruse so he can search the boarding houses for the ransom money. In doing so, he actually finds Thomas's map and realises it was him all along. During this party and search, Thomas takes the opportunity to go under Malcolm's house and finds a tunnel. Malcolm and his two founding friends set a plan to flush Thomas out. Malcolm waits for Thomas on the other side with a shotgun, whilst another follows him inside the tunnel. Thomas realises there's a trap and takes an alternate route through a tunnel of blood and guts, and then gets chased by the old woman, the goddess, and he escapes to a cave at the end of the tunnel, which has many strange markings and pictures on the walls, seemingly depicting the old woman, the goddess, and people praying to her. In the morning, Andrea finds him and brings him fresh clothes. Thomas takes this opportunity to tell her that Jennifer is no spy, but was kidnapped, and the man she thinks her father is not the man he really is now. Malcolm goes to the old woman, their goddess, who is inside a nest and is surrounded by trees, and feeds her his own blood, while accusing her of poisoning his crops. As he feeds her, the trees around her sprout new leaves, and a bloodied man with a bizarre mask of twigs, who we will call the Grinder, pulls a person in a sack, Jennifer, and suspends the sack on a hook. Meanwhile, Fionn informs Jeremy that she is pregnant, and knowing her father, Quinn, will not allow them to be together, they decide to leave the island and elope. Quinn finds her packing her things and beats her, discovering that she is pregnant by Jeremy, and knowing what the animals have recently given birth to, he tells her that the child will be a deformed abomination. And so, he performs an abortion with a knife, killing her in the process. Jeremy returns to Fionn's home and finds her in a pool of blood. He then gets into a fight with Jeremy that will eventually spill outside, where Quinn takes the opportunity to gain support from the villagers and accuses Jeremy of killing his daughter. Jeremy runs away, fearing for his life, and ends up running into Thomas and Andrea. Thomas and Jeremy are then captured, and Thomas is forced to watch Jeremy tortured and brutally murdered in a ritualistic killing as a sacrifice to the goddess. Quinn then declares Malcolm a false prophet and demands that he proves himself by killing Thomas, while Andrea begs him not to. Frank returns with a gun, finding his son killed, says that she has to die, allowing Thomas to escape. He flees to an isolated cabin where the bloodied Grinder kills Frank as Quinn and Malcolm arrive. Quinn shoots Malcolm in the shoulder, sending him crashing into a trap door down into the mysterious tunnel. Thomas hides in the house where he sees a dismembered Jeremy and the Grinder force-feeding the blood to the goddess in her nest, causing the leaves to sprout once more. Thomas frees Jennifer from her sack, but is hit in the head by the Grinder, and he wakes up to find himself strapped to a table and being pulled into a giant meat grinder, thus the name Grinder, which mangles several of his fingers before he manages to get free and kill the Grinder with the cables. Whilst this is happening, Quinn has captured Jennifer and ties her up alongside Andrea, whom he tells her father is dead. He reveals that he is the one who imprisoned the goddess in the tree nest after they arrived, when he realised what she could do for them. He said that Malcolm didn't have the courage to feed her what she really needed, the flesh of humans. He boasts to the women that they will be impregnated repeatedly by him, and their babies will be sacrificed to feed her. As Thomas approaches the goddess in the nest, she speaks to Thomas in a bizarre language, whilst holding his head and sending vines under his skin, causing him to go into a trance where he sees how Malcolm and Quinn used her. She then asks him to set her free, and he lights her tree nest on fire, killing the goddess and setting her free finally. As the goddess burns, the village burns along with her, sending the villagers fleeing to the boats. Thomas returns to the village, trying to find his sister, and stabs Quinn in the neck. However, Quinn manages to stab him repeatedly in the ribs before dying. Thomas frees his sister and Andrea, but is unable to make it to the boats because of the injuries he has sustained. He begs them to pray for him as they leave him there, and as the boat leaves, an injured Malcolm finds Thomas lying in the grass. Thomas sees the grass growing up around him, where his blood is dripping, and begins laughing as the grass covers him and pierces his skin, his eyes becoming like the goddess's own. And in doing so, we learn that the goddess and the movie itself is actually an allegory for Mother Nature and, surprisingly, politics. The writer and director, Gareth Evans, has since explained that the goddess on the island is representative of Mother Nature, the Earth, and she feeds off the island and in turn feeds the island. As the humans show up on the island, rather than revering Mother Nature, respecting her and taking what she provides, they enslave her, make a machine of her. In doing so, they turn everything foul and toxic, and she no longer wishes to provide and feed the island. This becomes the allegory for politics, religion, and the corruption of both. As Thomas freed the goddess, Mother Nature, going from a firm atheist now to a believer in nature, he then replaces the goddess. The ending itself is intended to represent the cyclical nature of violence and political corruption throughout history. But what did you think of the ending of Apostle? Let me know down below in the comment section, and if you enjoyed this video then please do hit that like button and share it with your friends. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. As always, I'm Mr. H and I will catch you in the next video.